Government parental leave pay is a series of payments to new parents of value of $25,500 that will be going up even more from the 1st of July next year. It's a key component of the government plan to support working families. However, eligibility for the scheme can be complex, and there is not much discussion of how to optimise the payments from the scheme. So as someone that's been working with eligibility for government programs for many years, I just think this particular scheme doesn't have enough resources for new families trying to make sure that they're eligible. And there's no reason why they shouldn't be laser focused on trying to make sure everything that this scheme has to offer them can be maximised. So what I'm trying to do is build better tools, and this is part of it. So I'd really like you to have a look at what I'm talking about, just to get some sense of the complexity, the timing, the testing, and then perhaps be part of a group to help me get better at it. For the 180,000 families each year that have this complex eligibility and this opportunity to make this payment really work for them at a vulnerable time. It's about timing, okay? So the actual date of birth of the baby sets in play a whole lot of related timings that you need to be aware of, in terms of parental leave pay. So keep in mind that it's a pay that is funded by the government. It's separate to other entitlements that an employer might offer. It can come from the government to the employer to you, or it can be claimed directly from Services Australia. And it can be stacked on to other payments. So if you're working in a traditional kind of employer-employee kind of situation and they offer some financial support, you can stack this on top of it. And, we're going to talk a little bit more about the flexibility that you have. So it's $25,400 or so in value. So that's 120 payments of $189.62. There is superannuation that is also payable on top of that, which gives you that number of $25,484. Now, from the 1st of July next year, that goes up. There's 10 more days in the pot, and of course the daily rate will go up with inflation. But you have to apply for this payment. It's not something that is adjusted at the end of the tax year or whatever. It's $4.8 billion. That's a significant component of the budget. It's focused on working families. I want you to really notice there the word small business. That encapsulates family businesses, people working for themselves, as well as part-time and casual employees, and it's 180,000 families. So this is a significant payment for a significant proportion of the population. So you've got the baby's expected arrival date. These are some of the things you need to consider, the basics. You have 3 months before the baby is born to start applying for the payment, although you can't receive it until the baby is born. You have 1 year to apply for the payment. So if you're looking at this and you think you might have been eligible but not applied and you're still within the 1 year, you might be in good shape to get organised. After 2 years, the days expire. We're going to talk a bit more about that in a minute. And there's another little time or date in there to be aware of that. If you haven't applied, baby's born, you've got 100 days to go to get started on this to be able to get back paid. So it might be your preference to get the payment in your hands straight away, and you have 100 days after the baby arrival to get that organised. Let's start talking about other timing issues now. There are 2 tests to work out if you are eligible for the payment. One of them is the work test, and the work test is run over a period of time of 13 months before the birth or arrival of the baby. Now, if you're in a fairly straightforward employer-employee situation, this may not be as relevant, but for part-time, casual, self-employed, this work test can be a lot more complicated. You need to work 330 hours within a period of 10 out of the 13 months prior with no more than a 12-week gap. And let me assure you that there is a lot of flexibility in there, which is one of the things that I really want to focus on in terms of building tools for families to ensure their eligibility for this payment. There was a report that came out last year, 1 in 4 mothers not taking up paid parental leave, but the bigger component are those working in small business. Another thing to consider is the impact of the financial year. Now, according to the rules, the income test is going to be applied to the financial year immediately prior to the birth of the baby. So If, for example, a baby's born, March 2026, the income test is finished on the 30th of June 2020. If baby was expected after 30th of June 2026, the income test will be running up until 30th of June 2026. So if you're starting to focus on your eligibility at in the second half of 2025 and your baby is due before 30 June, the income test is already done for you, but you might be amongst the assessment period for the income test. And if you're bumping close to those limits, there's scope to make changes. So I guess all I'm just trying to focus on here is the opportunity to look very carefully of where you are on the timeline and to take the opportunity to assess how you satisfy some of the eligibility criteria. And there might be scope to make changes. For example, if your income was bumping up towards the limits, you would be looking very closely at that income test, what constitutes income, and you might even be able to make some changes based on whether it's a benefit to you to ensure eligibility for the payment. The other area where timing of the payments I think is really important, and this applies to everybody, is that you're eligible for payments from the birth of the baby, and then you've got a 2-year period. And the question is, how are you going to structure the payments? One thing that you might be a very obvious thing to focus on is the financial year. Say, for example, if baby's born, in the final quarter of a financial year, and then you stack all the payments in that financial year just before you're going into a year where you possibly have a low taxable income, you might be paying more tax than you need to. So there's a really good opportunity just to get that timeline to look at the period, from birth and the 2 years that you have to take those payments, and to assess between yourself and if there's a partner in the picture, which of you might have a low tax year to allocate those payments. Okay, so this is just one element of the timing. So, from the period of birth to 2 years, you have an opportunity to structure payments in a way that I can only really, characterize as like being a game of Tetris. And I'll explain a bit more why. These payments can be made to you or your partner, and there is a set number that can be paid at the same time. You have to be paid when you're not working, but this can include weekends. You might even decide that from the birth of the child, you want to get those payments, as much money straight away. You work out how many days you can have in conjunction with your partner getting the payment at the same time, and you might organise to be paid 7 days a week, right? So just with respect to those payments, remember that they're taxable. Remember that they're flexible in terms of, can be paid to you, they can be paid to your partner. Getting paid parental leave pay actually counts as work for the work test. And a situation where I thought it might be interesting is that if you're getting 120 of these payments, each of them being worth 7.6 hours, that's a total of 912 hours. So we were referring to the work test before. If you've had a baby, and you might have a second baby planned, and you're not working for 2 years, you could structure those payments to come once a week. And if there was a baby, for example, came after 2 years, who knows who gets the timing right, but you could satisfy the work test. For the Leave Pay site, you can see, focus on all these things that we're referring to, and you might look at our tool, which gives you the chance to put in, when the baby's expected, talking about where you are and some of the things that we've talked about here. You can get that sent to you. It's really useful part of this whole kind of timing story. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. We've got this site we're building. There's a tool that will help you place yourself where you are now and baby's due and some of those key dates. What we want to work on now is probably more video around some of the tests. So we're just looking for people to get involved. And if you're right in the zone of with baby plans or baby coming, it'd be great if you could get involved and help build better tools.